All right, so you read the title. We're down 991, close to the daily loss limit. Again, I'm risking the daily loss limit per trade idea, especially on the evaluation, because simply because again, we're not trying to stay on this evaluation for, like the first one we had whenever we were first trading this month. We were on an evaluation that I started all the way in March, and we were just draining our money every month. We weren't even trading. I'm back into trading and back testing, reviewing, analyzing, but I need to review again today. I need to review this trade, analyze it, learn, go back test more, review my back tested trades. I have not done that, but I plan on doing that today. But again, let's go over this trade idea. I think this trade idea was really well. You can see the bias was correct. Everything here was correct. The level held too. It just simply was the entry and the timing of when we entered that caused us to lose. And again, everything else was right. And then we took another trade on gold right around here. We closed it pretty early on the second account. And then eventually you can see it ran all the way to our take profit. But after this high was met, we would have probably got the position to break even, and that would have put us all at break even trade, and then eventually would hit the trade idea here. Again, understanding the conditions, understanding the market conditions, and like really understanding when to put risk on and like when to have lower risk is something I need to work on right now, simply because whenever we saw the entry model present itself and like we had conviction on the trade idea, we should have been able to identify, okay, maybe this trade idea isn't the best, but it's still there. We should lower the risk. We should lower the risk, and we shouldn't be risking as much as we should have today on the NQ trade. But again, it was nice one-to-one we're aiming for, just have us back at that buffer. And again, tomorrow we can probably find a trade idea for a one-to-one, risking the daily drawdown limit and be back to break even, if not more. So that's basically really it. So let's go over this trade idea. So again, when I've been backtesting, I've been reviewing a lot more of the market structure, and like what I'm looking for is market structure. Simple as that. Here you can see we had our external objective right here, which was this low. From this low to this high were our external objectives, and you can see the market eventually it created this range. We were inside of this range. I wasn't going to trade until either side was swept, and eventually you can see the low was swept, and it was inside of a 15-minute PDA array, which was a buy side imbalance. So we had a break right here, and then the market continued to the downside, and we broke structure one more time down here, or we swept. So we swept the market. We didn't break structure, and then we created a high, and we broke above that, and then the market came back down, swept this low, and eventually it moved up higher. Had a closure above this little down close candle, which swept the internal low, and again the external low was already being swept. We had no closures until this right here. The market had a closure above, and I entered there. I was going to move the stop loss to break even at this high, and eventually we had a fair value gap form. I was like, all right, hold on, this trade, it might not hold, but I'm willing to hold it, simply because of the fair value gap and the way it was reacting to like how it was reacting to the downside. I really didn't like that. When it comes down like so aggressive to the downside, you don't want to see that. You want to see the market push up higher and continue to the upside, and break above this high and then eventually come back down. Since this is like more inside of a bearish PD area, and we don't really have anything more bearish, this is more of inside of a range here. This is all bearish right here, and we could have went up and then came back down. That would have been more ideal, but the stops would have been at break even, and we were aiming for the standard deviation. But again, if I was risking for a one-to-one, this would have been the trade idea. Not bad, but we wanted to aim for a little bit more, since we did have the standard deviations and the manipulation lag of this right here. And then eventually you can see the market came back down, and then eventually it gyrated for a little bit. Low right here would have been your new low. You see the low got swept, and then this high right here eventually got swept right there, and eventually started to push up higher once you saw this break right here. This is a good break in market structure too also, but I would have just simply preferred this one right here, since it does have more manipulation to it, and eventually you see the market never came back down. So this is kind of what I want to see right here. Once you break above that high, I wanted to see this right here, same price action, start to push up higher, but we never got that. But again, the market just never really moved, and it just continued to the upside there, and it was just nice price delivery, honestly. And again, I was trying to trade last night. I won't even lie to you. I was looking to trade last night. That's how bad I was, down bad I was. I don't know what it is. After backtesting, I felt a lot more confident. I was like, all right, man, this market is mine. I'm gonna trade it. I'm gonna win. I'm past the evaluation. But again, understanding the conditions, understanding what makes a high probability setup, especially after such a large expansion move like this. The market is it doesn't have to have speed and delivery. It can range, it can chop inside, and then eventually move up. Especially on a Monday, I should have been able to anticipate, after such a strong expansion move from this low to this high. 203 points pre-market. Is that pre-market? That is around, yeah, pre-market, close to pre-market. The market is chilling around. We don't have news this week, so I should have been able to like really read the market here and be like, all right, We had a 200 point move. ES and Dow Jones aren't really moving as clear, especially ES is chopping around too, and NQ is going down, having SMTs there, and we should have been able to anticipate, like, all right, this isn't clean price action, this isn't like moving with speed, clear delivery, we aren't like rejecting off of the low and then moving up with speed, especially here gyrating around for so long. We should have been able to anticipate, like, all right, this is 10 to 11, your silver bullet, there's no clear clean price action, so we should just lower the risk. And but if we go to a higher time frame, since we had multiple here form, and you can see the market just was not respecting either one, like from this low got disrespected this one, the 30 candle didn't really move, and then eventually we started to move up higher on the 30 minute here. This would have been a better CRT here, especially with this right here sweeping, and then eventually the market moving up higher. This one right here, so we went back down to the 1 minute. This is where the market started to move up clearly after having nice price action. Third candle right there, boom, you sweep, and then you had a break of market structure, and then you start to push up higher on like the 3 minute. 2 minute we didn't have any. Okay, on the 2 minute we had a nice fair value up here form right here. That could have been your trade idea as soon as you got that inversion form, and stops could have been at this low, and you could have just been targeting this high. That would have been a nice 1 to 2 clear speed objective. So again, here we could have won this type of things. We could have done better here was simply scale up a time frame on the 30 minute and understand that, okay, we have a 2 minute fair value up here, sweep. We also had a change in the state of delivery here from this right here, and we had a breaker form. Of course, the breaker was chopping around, and then we formed another one, and then that eventually pushed us up higher. But again, time-based elements, using time-based elements like the CRT. So using the time-based elements like the CRT to understand when the market is going to move and giving you a better confirmation signal. And again, when I backtested, this is what I was using too. But again, I was more freestyling whenever I was backtesting, but I still have the results, and I'm still going to continue to backtest and add more rule-based. And again, this is a learning experience. Every time you take a loss, you can learn from it. That's what happened here. We lost, and we eventually are going to come back and bounce back from that. The 45 minute did not have one, so only the 30 minute there flopped. If flopped, this would have been the trade right here, and it just flopped. Boom. This one flopped right here. As soon as you see the closure, all right, boom. Start to notice that, and then we realize this is the one right here. The 5 minute, again, bearish order block here, respected until eventually it wasn't, until we had this breaker market structure right there, and then eventually the market started to move higher. Again, just choppy market conditions, chopping inside of here. This is where we got chopped up, and then eventually we lost. Of course, you're gonna win, sometimes you're gonna lose. You can't really expect the market to give you what you want. You just simply have to see what the market is offering, and understanding when it's high probability and just taking that. So yeah, this is the trade idea. This is what we could have done better to enter the trade and win. But eventually here we had the gold trade, which wasn't bad either. Here was the gold trade right here. We took this right here. We took the gold trade here on this one, on this account. After we lost on the other one, I got in and I got out real quick. On the 15-second here, this is where the entry was at 328.7. So right here, this was the entry. Eventually you can see the market just started to move higher than 3293. Reason why is because I just didn't have enough analysis on this one, and I just didn't feel comfortable holding this type of trade. And that's something I need to work on. Like if I take a trade and I follow my rules and my plan, and I'm confident in it, then of course holding the trade and letting it run, letting it breathe, and that would have basically simply, as soon as we saw this breaker form, that's where we started to really look for the trade idea. And eventually you can see it did work out, it did pan out, but this would have been the chop to hold, and then eventually the market would eventually hit us. And then this was the final target, but I wasn't really planning on aiming for there. So, especially with my strategy right now, I'm aiming for a 1-to-1, trying to get these 2% wins to eventually pass the account, since we're aiming for 6% to pass the account. 2%, maybe 3%. We're aiming for a 3% win, so not even, is that a negative R since we're risking 2%, but we're aiming for 3% win. But yeah, that's pretty much really it here. But there was no sweep, there was no key PD areas we're hitting to look for longs until later today. But 991, we're gonna simply journal this trade, review it, and then see this one right here and be like, all right, we could have done a lot more better here if we simply waited, scaled up time frames, and just looked for higher time frame confirmations. And again, we could have had a re-entry here if we really were that confident. But after the chop, I was like, all right, I'm calling it a day here. And then this one is at 131 right now. So it's not really bad, but it's not the best here, honestly, if I'm being truly honest. So yeah, we're at 175 right now for this monthly PNL. 2 green days. This one was just a horrible day. We were just gambling. Today wasn't really as bad, but we could have done better, if I'm being truly honest. That's pretty much really it. The target is again 3K, and now we're just simply aiming for that right now. again, we're risking a lot more than we usually are. Yeah, we're just gonna take it easy. We're gonna go back test, review. I mean, we're gonna review the back tested trades, and if I have time, I'm gonna back test. If not, then I'm gonna continue to review those trades, build more rules, more restrictions of lower time from entries, again, because it's really the lower time from entries that we get it wrong. The bias was correct, everything was correct here, simply just the lower time frame, the entry was not ideal. Same thing with the confirmation was not ideal because we didn't understand, you know, what makes a good lower time from entry today. And again, I don't want to let that happen. This one was a good lower time from entry, and we're gonna understand why was it a good lower time from entry. You know, it didn't sweep the external low we had in the fair value gap there. It was just breaking these lows, and then we started to move up higher after we manipulated. I want to understand why this one was better, you know, and that's pretty much really it. So